Welcome, everybody. I am so excited for this. Being asked to talk about football for an hour is always a joy and not something I get to do professionally very often. So I was delighted to be asked. And as everyone knows, this webinar is part of Sporting Pride's Get Out, Get Active campaign, which is being supported by Bank of Ireland's Begin Together Fund. And for more information on that and how you get involved in making sport in Ireland more inclusive, visit sportingpride.ie. They do such good work. And also, while to contact one of Ireland's LGBTQ plus inclusive football clubs, search for Dublin Devils, Cork Rebels, Phoenix Tigers, or Belfast Blaze as well. Let's get straight into this. I'm so excited to have the conversations we're going to have. A little bit about myself. I made a documentary around this topic a couple of years ago, back in 2017, I think it was, an investigation into representation of LGBTQ plus people in football, mostly in the UK, a little bit about Ireland as well. And we kind of just went around the Premier League for the guts of a year and made ourselves a bad smell for everybody. But really just wanted to find out why nothing had changed for a very long time and what needed to be done in order to find that representation at the highest level, but also all the way down to grassroots as well. And we're going to have a conversation all about it today. I'm so excited to welcome into this chat, first up, Adam Kane, Secretary of Dublin Devils FC. He's going to be talking all about his love of football, his love for Pats, which I love as well, because my cousin played for Pats for so long, Mr. Conan Byrne, and Mr. Graham Souness as well, who is, of course, one of England's most successful players, five-time league champion, manager as well, and, of course, a pundit too at the moment as well. Thank you so much for coming, guys. I'm so excited for this. First off, before we actually get into it, I just want to ask you guys, who's going to win the Euros? What do you think? And don't say Scotland, Brad. Don't say Scotland.
Well, I think on paper, France look particularly strong, but that doesn't always work out. You know, the strongest team on paper winning it. England have a chance. I personally don't think they'll be good enough when they come up against, you know, a couple of really big guys. But they could get to the final. I wouldn't look beyond France right now. When you go through the squad they have real strength and depth. So I have to pump for France right now. But
as a Chelsea fan, I love to hear that.
The best teams don't always win. You know, the best teams don't always win competitions. Yeah. So, but on paper, France look particularly strong, and it's a really hard call. Just one game in.
I think purely as a Chelsea fan, I want Kante to win that Ballon d'Or. So I'm like, make sure France win this competition. Adam Kane, welcome. What about you? What do you think? Who's going to win it? Come on.
I don't know. I'd have to say, you know, Portugal very strong, kind of all around the pitch. And I know they left it out against Hungary, but you know, I'd probably fancy them along with France. So I won't be saying our neighbours. I'd like to say Scotland, obviously, but I'll be cheering for them. I don't know whether they win it or not, though.
We just win a game. We need to win a game.
Yeah. And keep their keeper on the line as well. Graham, for you, you know, some people might ask, "Oh, why are you here?" But I remember that impassioned kind of talk that you gave on Sky Sports, and I think it was in the same airing as, was it when Hector Bellerin had the piece with players, and I just thought it was wonderful. And my dad called me into the room actually and was just like, come here, you need to see this. For you, what made you kind of talk out like that, and tell us a little bit about your journey to joining this conversation, which is actually quite interesting?
Well, you know, I'm of a certain vintage. You know, I've been around a long time. I've been part of and joined in the banter. I'm not perfect. Dressing rooms which can be extremely homophobic places. And I like to think of, you know, I'm now a father of, well, responsible for 6 children. And I think when kids come along, you start to look at life differently. You know, I've got dear friends of mine whose sons are gay. I think it's just the long journey I've been on. At my age, I've witnessed a great deal, experienced a great deal. And have I changed with my attitudes over the years? 100%. And how did I first get involved in this? Well, it was through Paddy Power that asked me if I'd be interested in getting involved in the Gay Pride walk in Brighton a couple of years ago. And it was a real eye-opener for me. I took my son, who was 18 at the time, 19, and he just enjoyed himself so much. I enjoyed it, and it was just a real eye-opener that, you know, looking at these things from a distance, you know, it's easy to sort of make negative comments. But I saw young people who were thoroughly enjoying themselves, enjoying each other's company, and not everybody was gay there, and it was just a great day out, and it was a great place to be. And I think, as I say, it was an enormous eye-opener for me. And I think, you know, you question yourself. You know, again, I come back to, I've been in football for a very long time, around dressing rooms for a very long time. And I hope and I think dressing rooms have changed now. I think there's far more acceptance, you know, right across the board, whether it's the colour of your skin or your sexuality. I like to think that. I've not been in a dressing room for many years now, but I just hear the way guys talk, you know, current players talk, and I think the attitude is there's been a real sea change in football.
Completely. That reaction to when you spoke out on Sky Sports that time, did you feel that when you know, people on Twitter were so supportive of what you said, obviously, but were obviously even taken aback somewhat?
Yeah, I think. See, I don't do social media. You know, I think it's just as well because I'd get, you know, for every Liverpool supporter, there appears to be 2 Man United supporters who want to give you stick. So I don't go anywhere near social media. But I mean, I don't. You know, I like to think I was speaking from the heart. As I said, I've been on a long journey, and I was part of a dressing room. I would have joined in the banter. I would have been, you know, saying the stupid things. And you like to think as you grow up, you see things differently. I certainly do. And I'd like to think that all my contemporaries would have changed dramatically from how we all were going back 30, 40 years in the dressing room, you know, cracking the jokes and making stupid comments.
Adam, tell us a bit about Dublin Devils and I guess your involvement in it, and also what you guys are for people who might not know.
Yeah, sure. So the Dublin Devils they were founded in April of 2005, so we're 16 years old now. The club started from an advertisement being placed in GCN, the Gay Community News in Ireland, and I think 9 people showed up to the original kickabout. So the club, we now have over 100 members, which is great, and with, you know, great interest shown, particularly the last 12 months, you know, with COVID and stuff like that. People really keen to get out and get involved that normally probably wouldn't have either played football since they were younger, and stuff like that. So yeah, no, so essentially we're just an LGBTQ plus football club that offers that outlet for you know, footballers from the community and allies as well, to promote and advocate for inclusion in football and just LGBTQ plus rights across the board. So we've our competitive and social sides to suit all types of players. And yeah, I joined back in the summer of 2019, and I only got a bit of football towards the end, obviously, of that year.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, but it was really great, really great club with great people, and I have to say.
I think one of the big questions people always have when they see an LGBT team is they sometimes say, why do you need it? Like, they'd be like, why do you need a gay bar? Can't you just all go to... It's with safe spaces, obviously, is one of the main things, but also to socialize in that regard. Do you come up against that question a lot from people? Why do you need a gay team?
Yeah, it's the most common question. But as you said, like as you touched on there, like, you know, the social aspect of it, and, you know, kind of that sense of belonging that, you know, a lot of other people, you know, playing for football teams will have, but when you're a gay person in that football team, like that, I suppose heteronormative culture can feel very isolating for you, and especially, you know, if there are certain kind of terms and words being used, that it, you know, it does make you feel very isolated in those teams. So that's why, you know, the likes of the Dublin Devils, I think you mentioned the Cork Rebels, the Belfast Blaze, etc. So, you know, these clubs exist for, you know, people from the community to feel comfortable.
Graham, you had such a successful career, and you played through a time when a player did come out, which for me was sort of a template growing up in that regard. And, you know, obviously, sadly, we lost Justin Fashanu. I was lucky enough to meet Amal, his niece, a couple of years ago, and kind of talk about his story and find out all about him. But I still couldn't bring myself back to what it would have been like around that time in the footballing world. when he did come out. And obviously, you know, he had a very tough manager, and it was just a very different world back then, not only in the football game. So what do you kind of remember of that time? And I guess the reaction within the football world, but also why it wasn't received in the way that it would be maybe now.
Well, that was such a long time ago. You know, we've moved on a country mile in our attitudes to many, many things, and today is really their business, their private business. Um, Obviously, being part of the dressing room time talking about it, and I think, although I can't be 100% correct in everything I'm about to say because it was so long ago, you know, if one of our players had come out, I don't think it would have been welcomed. And that is a sad part. We're going back, that must be 30 odd years ago that Justin came out. And the world was a very different place. It would have been very difficult for him. And it was an extremely brave move. And I think he ended up having to go up to Scotland to play because I think he was shunned down here. And I've heard his daughter speak, or is it his niece speak?
His niece, yeah, Mel.
She speaks, you know, she speaks so well, but I mean, you can only imagine how difficult it must. And he was black; it must have been super difficult for him at that time. But
he was the first £1 million black footballer. He was, yeah.
I can remember him. I was going to watch Duncan Ferguson play for Dundee up in Edinburgh, and I bumped into him in a random place in the city centre. And he had the most, you know, a big cheesy smile and big welcoming face. And, you know, he must have had a real personality, which, you know, a special personality, which allowed him to absorb, take on board all the amount of negativity that would have been thrown at him. But at that time, I honestly don't think it would have worked for him. I think he would have been more or less an outcast. But you got to remember this is 35 years ago. You know, and you examine the situation today, why no one's come out in the dressing room today. You know, I think at the highest level, well, in any level in the professional game, there must be, you know, lots of guys who would love to come out but feel they're not in a comfortable space. They don't feel they'll get support if they were to come out, and then they would worry about the attitude of some of their team members. I don't think today. I would imagine today it would not be a problem for his immediate teammates. There you are. That's how far we've travelled from when I was a player in the dressing room to where we are today. I think today, if a gay player were to come out, I think his own teammates would gather around him and be very supportive of him. Now, the steps beyond that, you know, going out to play a game and on hostile away grounds, a whole different conversation. But I would imagine today, if a player came out in the dressing room today, his teammates would rally around him and support him, and he'd be fine. That was not the case when I was a player.
Completely, and I guess it is the fear of the stands, and you don't want to be going into a match with, you know, 50% of your brain thinking that you're going to be abused by fans in any way. And I remember I spoke to Graham Lasso kind of about the abuse that he got around that time, and he was very much kind of open about, you know, I think he was called gay for reading The Guardian or something like that. And obviously the Robbie Fowler incident kind of happened around that time as well. But he said that there were moments, I think it was a West Ham game, where he went out there and he wasn't gay, but he was getting this abuse that he just couldn't even focus on the game. So I can't imagine if someone did come out and that did happen in that regard. But you would hope that, I guess, the safety nets would be there with the FA and all that in order to protect against that inevitable, because I've been to Brighton games before where there's been things said and stuff, and it's obviously very difficult.
If you could imagine, because this is something I've spoken about this with my wife several times. You can imagine the player says to his agent, like, I'm ready, I want to come out. So he makes a meeting with the chief executive. He's sitting in the office with the chief executive, and he says, look, whoever so-and-so has got something to tell you. So he tells the chief executive that he's gay and he wants to come out. And the first thing the chief executive would think of is market value. If they were a big team, the second thing he'd be thinking about, we have sponsors in countries like in the Middle East, where they would withdraw the sponsorship right away. I'm just thinking out loud here, but this is something I remember when I went on the march, or not the march, on the walk in Brighton, and the questions were asked all the time: why is there no big player come out? And there has to be players out there, but it's fraught with, I don't know, it's not just about the guy coming out and saying, right, I'm ready to come out, I feel secure enough, I know my mates will rally around me. I think the bigger picture, and it sounds a terrible thing to say, but this would be factored in by the football club. The commercial damage it would do to the football club.
In countries where obviously they have massive fan bases. During that year that I made the documentary, we spoke to most clubs in the Premier League pretty much, and there was some really good. I remember speaking to Ivan Gazidis, is it? He's with AC Milan now, but he was with Arsenal at the time, and he was very like, I want to talk about this, and great. But then there was actually some clubs that really just wanted us to shut the hell up. They were really just like, get away, and couldn't see that. And I think it was because they didn't want. They were afraid, I think, actually, of what would engaging in the conversation, maybe in case they said something wrong, or maybe in case they said the wrong thing or something like that. But they just were very much, we don't want to. Adam, for you, growing up as a teenager in football teams, coming out, did it make that very difficult? For me, like, it was one of the reasons why I came out very late. I was playing schoolboy football, and I just felt like I couldn't, and my dad was my manager as well at the time, so that made it even tougher. What was that experience like for you, and what would you say at a schoolboy level here in Ireland are the right things that need to be done in order to make it an inclusive environment, so that when we were kids, people like us are very happy to come out within that environment right here in this country?
Yeah, so like I was very similar to yourself, but it sounds it, just in terms of like, kind of growing up, playing it from an early age, kids would naturally use these words that they hear, their peers saying, calling someone gay, but obviously in a derogatory term, and the F word and stuff like that. They were put downs that kind of, kids gave each other. When you're kind of that, young enough that 7 to 10, you don't really think about. You just know that's not a nice. I don't want to be that. It was then when you start kind of turning 13, 14, 15. You become more self-aware about who you are and your sexuality, and you understand, okay, right, I know what these words mean now. And again, it comes back to that kind of uncomfortable, awkward, isolating kind of feeling. And it was when I was 17, I stopped playing at the level that was kind of suited for my ability. Now, it wasn't any great ability now, but I dropped down a couple of levels to play with my mates, because I had come out to them, and playing on a football team with them, made me a lot more comfortable. In terms of like, there was none of that, any like those kind of words wouldn't have been said or tolerated by them. So I think, to just bring it back to kind of what needs to be done, I think there needs to be policies put in place to kind of weed it out and not tolerate, have a zero tolerance for that kind of language being used amongst players, coaches, parents, or whoever it is on the sidelines as well, because those things, just as I said, that they don't currently exist. So I think it's just being able to call it out and say, here, that's not on, don't, like, and then having the right kind of stuff to follow up with that to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I suppose, like with a lot of things in football, it does need, it doesn't need to be like from the bottom up. It needs to be from the bottom up and the top down, and they need to meet each other in the middle. So, I think that would be the club, but it needs to come from a national level as well, and there needs to be structures and stuff there in place. Then the clubs can then base these policies and stuff off as well.
Because the scary thing about it is actually it, in my experience, that sort of attitude, or just that fear as a teenager of it, actually pulls LGBTQ plus people away from sport and engaging in it, because the fear of just feeling uncomfortable, I guess, within maybe dressing rooms or anything else, and just feeling like maybe the words might be thrown at them. I know as well when like that creates like this negativity even in the gay world towards sports sometimes when the Super League kind of thing happened and everyone was talking about it. I saw a lot of gay friends being like, what is this? Shut the hell up. Like, oh God, mask, and all that. And it was very much like, oh
100%.
God,
Yeah.
I'm caught between two things here. I don't know what to say. But that is mostly because at that young age, gay people and LGBTQ plus people are told that they're almost not welcome. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And, I think it's, and again, it manifests in itself in why we don't have a new gay male professional footballer at the moment. And, I think a lot of kind of, people who are gay and, do want to be involved in sports, they tend to kind of go for more individual sports rather than team sports to avoid that kind of, that hyper masculinity, that kind of, that dressing room banter, for want of a better word. So it does show, like, the likes of Tom Daly and stuff like that, massively successful and stuff like that, but again, individual, not part of like a team, obviously part of Team GB, but relies on himself to get the job done. And I think that needs to be looked at, I think, a little bit more, as to why this is the case.
Graham, as you know, someone who has managed in the Premier League, what would you kind of do if a player came to you, or would you even know? Do you know in any way kind of what your reaction would be in that instance?
Well, I think I touched on it before. I think the dressing rooms today would be accepting. I think they would get around that and support them. I think further up the tree in terms of the chief executive or the owner or board of directors, they would panic a bit because they'd be coming back to the pounds, shilling and pence, unfortunately, argument. Yeah, but I'd also throw in, I mean, if a player were to come out, it's been extremely lucrative move for him. To be the first gay player to come out as a professional footballer, his marketing would be enormous. He would clean up. But I as a manager, it would be taken out of my hands. All I could speak for as a manager, if a player came to me, I'd say, listen, we're with you, whatever you need. 24 hours a day, we're going to be here for you. I think the dressing would be the exact same. In a dressing room, you're very much in it together. And I do believe the dressing rooms have changed dramatically since I was a player. I think further up the tree, you might be meeting a bit of resistance, or you can't do that because of what we've talked about previously. They might be advertising Saudi Arabian Airlines or something. And all the decision makers, commercial decision makers at football clubs, they would panic, and that's a very sad state of affairs. But that's the reality of it in the professional game. But on a personal note, I think every single today, if that a player come out, every single one of them, they would get behind them in the dressing room. They would get behind them. That's how the game has changed, I believe.
And with your experience kind of within clubs, over the years, was mental health ever a question amongst players ever? Because I know I heard recently, I think it was Tony Cascarino said that he got a call during the last year from Chelsea to ask him whether he was doing all right during the pandemic. And they were calling old kind of professionals and older players who had come through the club over the years just to see if they were doing okay, all the way back to Cascarino. So that is, mental health care on another level. And I'm not just saying it as a Chelsea fan, but that is mental health care on another level. For you, was mental health ever a question in the dressing room? Was it ever something that was considered or ever spoken about?
Never. That would be, and again, it's just another example of how far we've moved on. Never, if you had said, I need to sit down and talk to someone, I mean, you would have got a lot of stick for that. That same man up. What's wrong with you? So we lost the game. You're not playing well. We've all been there. Whereas a very different story today. Mental health never ever came into it. Never. It was a hard, and it still is. Professional sport, not just in soccer. Professional sport it's a hard place to work. You're winning, you're losing. You might go on a bad run as a team. You might go on a bad run as an individual, and some people find that difficult. And you hear people like me, I'm telling the pundits, talk about a player playing with confidence and someone without confidence. They're two different players. When you're playing with confidence, you're not taking the extra touch. you're moving on 1 and 2 touch. When it's not going well, you're taking extra touches. And just in a current situation, I was praying that Scotland would win the other night, so they were going to Wembley on Friday, playing with a bit of freedom and a bit of confidence. Now they're going there, searching for confidence, which will make it even more difficult for them. Dress. I come back to it. Professional sports are a hard place, hard place to work, and that's why there's so few people get to the very top of it.
Completely. And I guess when you are at the top, do you feel like a lot of the players feel that pressure, or do they at least get that built confidence from their club and from the people around them to maintain it? Because it's very difficult knowing that there's millions of people around the world literally counting on you in that regard.
Well, again, being in a dressing room, you've got if you've got a couple of leaders, you've got a good dressing room, and then the ones behind that will join in. But if you haven't got any leaders, good senior pros, you've got no chance. And I say that on a regular basis when I'm on the telly. I personally, I had, and I don't know where it came from, other than I was the youngest of 3 sons, and I came from a great family background, rock solid, that I had tremendous belief in my own abilities. And at no time can I look back. At no time do I look back and think I lacked in confidence when things weren't going well. It was just a temporary thing. I'll get myself out of this. It wasn't a case of head down and worrying about it. It was more a case of going out for a few beers and talking about it with my mates. But never ever did I question myself. But I don't think I was unique, but I don't think too many of that today. I think they're allowed that. They're allowed that time to maybe go and seek a different type of advice if they need it, and that didn't exist in my time in football.
Adam, for you here in Ireland, what do you think is, I guess, the appropriate kind of action? What is being done at the moment? I know you're a Pats fan, which I'm very happy about because my cousin Conan played for them, so I'm very delighted about that. In terms of the FAI, I know they've given us a statement, kind of as well, and just on the League of Ireland, how do you feel in this country playing with the Devils? Because your experience with them has been obviously incredibly positive, but do you guys ever come up against any kind of stick, or is there any moments where you have gotten abuse, even though kind of you are in that league and it's to be not tolerated because you are there as the club?
Yeah, personally, in my experience playing, in leagues and stuff like that, we haven't come across anything, verbally or anything like that. I suppose it's a bit of a weird one, because look, nobody likes losing. When you're playing against teams and you're beating them by a couple of goals, naturally they're not going to like it. But it does feel there's a certain element or layer of like, we shouldn't be losing to this team because they're gay, if that makes any sense. And I can't even, and it's different from playing against, say, teams when I was younger, or even a couple of years back, like where like losing is, people were annoyed, but as I said, there is this added layer of like, yeah, we shouldn't be losing to these. I haven't come across anything verbally myself, which is, it's a very, very nice complaint to have, and I hope this streak continues. But in terms of, I suppose, kind of our involvement with League of Ireland, we have an affiliation with Shelbourne. We actually have a match coming up against them on Saturday in Talca Park. It's part of the Football versus Homophobia initiative. So that's been hosted for the last couple of years, minus last year. So that's great, that they're really involved in that space. And another club I want to call out, although it naturally does pain me to say it, Bohemians are very good in that space as well. And I take my hat off to both of them clubs for what they've done.
They have the gay supporters group, don't they? Called the Gaybos, which I love.
Clever.
Yeah, very, very clever. In terms of where this is headed, Graham, do you think that we will see something like this happen in the near future, or do you think it's a lot longer down the line? I remember I was about 4 years ago, I made the documentary, and it felt like nothing was ever going to happen. But I have seen and felt the strides that have gone on in the last few years, whether it be simple things like, you know, rainbow laces and all that, but also just, you know, clubs adopting social media presences around pride, or things like the Hector Bellerin interview on Sky Sports with fans, and of course yourself as well. Do you think that is something that football is ready for? Do you think the logistics are there, and if a player comes out, it is ready to protect that guy and make sure that he's going to be safe, and at the same time, nothing is going to happen to hamper his career in any way?
I think we're closer than ever. I think it's imminent. Will it happen next season? It could happen anytime. I think there's a feeling out there now that, you know, football's changed dramatically. I would say in the last 5 years. You know, where we are now with the players taking a knee, and that's another sign that, you know, we're actually, the modern player is seen as more than just a turn up on a Saturday, plays game, goes home, has a few beers, and doesn't think about anyone outside their own little bubble. So I think it is imminent, and I think more and more it'll be made known to you're talking about mental health. There's another example. It'll be made known. The players, you know, the players have, you know, they have the sports science departments now. They have psychologists that they use. So all that is in place to give support to anyone who feels, you know, they need to come out and say, look, this is me. And I think we're nearer than we've ever been, and I would suggest it's imminent, because all the structures are in place. You know, you're talking. Yeah, I think everything you'd want, if you're thinking about coming out, is in place there to help you, like it's never been before in professional football. So I guess
it is the clubs with that responsibility, but then also there's a massive responsibility on the FA, I guess, as well, if that was to happen, and of course here at the FAI in Ireland too, to make that as safe as possible. It's not just, I guess, down to the clubs; it's very much down to.
I'm thinking of the player himself. He's in the dressing room with 25 mates, and he's going to sit down in the dressing room with his 24 pals, his teammates. You know, they'll play together, they'll lose together, and he's going to tell them, look, this is a real me, guys. And I think to a man, they would welcome him. They would get up, they would hug him. You know, they would make it clear from the very first minute that they are going to be with him in this journey. And then, you know, given the strength of player power today, that puts the club firmly behind it as well, as a football club. And then if it was a big club, that puts the FA, and they can only come out and support it big time. So I feel that we're going back to the very beginning, where there's mental health, there's psychiatrists at work on a daily basis with these footballers. There are, you know, obviously the day-to-day injuries you get, and I think everything is there in place for someone to come out and say, look, I am gay, this is me, and I'm ready. I know I'm in a secure environment. I know I've got support of my teammates. I know I've got support of my football club. And I really believe that's going to happen. That's going to happen, and it's imminent, in my opinion.
Adam, I can probably ask you.
Yeah. With all the support that's out there, when is it going to happen? If it can't happen now, when will it happen?
Yeah, I would agree in many ways. I think it's almost just like taking the air out of the balloon, you know, just giving it a pop. But I guess I struggled quite a lot with, when I made the documentary a few years ago, I was like, oh, would love a player to come out. This would be amazing. That's what I needed when I was a teenager, and all these things. And then had this overwhelming sense of selfishness about the situation, because coming out is such a personal journey for absolutely everybody. And I, in my own head, went, well, you know, players could have come out to their teams. That could have happened over the years. That could be happening right now, and we just don't know. And personally, I don't deserve to know, per se, because that is that person's story to tell when they want to tell it. But at the same time, I can't help but think about myself as a teenager and what that would have done for me, especially as a Chelsea fan, watching the Graham Lasso and Robbie Fowler incident when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and just not really understanding it, but then years later processing it, and then obviously all the reactions you would and things you would have heard on a football pitch. Adam, for you, as a teenager, as you know, when you were younger, what would it have meant if someone did actually step out and say, "Hey, I'm gay, and this is who I am"?
Like much the same as yourself, Stephen. Like it would make you feel valid. It would make you feel like your place on your team is valid and justified, and those kind of like that uncomfortableness that I spoke of earlier is that I feel like that would go to the wayside like a fair bit. You like and it's just having that role model to look up to and be like, I can be just as successful as this as this person if I look after myself and play the
Mm,
game properly. Um I can and like the fact that that would have such massive retribution again in terms of the policies and the stuff like that that need to be put in place that would be as a result of a player coming out would be massive. Like so, yeah, it'd be like it would have been so beneficial. But I can imagine what it's like now for people, for young people kind of growing up that it'd be really good for them to have a role model like that.
mm. And did you ever have any experiences, not just on the pitch, but also maybe going to a football match where you heard something? I remember I was at the Ireland-Italy game at the Euros back in 2016, and there was these two English lads from Oxford right beside us, and they were having the time of their life. Their dads were Irish. They were supporting Ireland. They were like, "We're here for Ireland. They're the best." And we were like, "This is gas. This is so much fun." And it was up until I think 88th minute, just before Brady's goal, that I was like, these are the best people in the world. And then they called the referee the F slur, and I went, I just dropped off my chair, and I was like, these people who I shared this moment with, the goal, us qualifying for the next round, all of that gone in a second. And it just kind of blew it all apart. Have you ever had any experiences kind of like that in at matches or anything? Because it's mostly it's around that sort of, as you said, hyper masculine machismo attitudes that just seep into games, and people probably are naturally go to those things in that environment. I don't know.
Yeah, like again, like I had a similar kind of experience just on the terraces supporting St. Pat's. Unfortunately, it was I think it was in June 2019. We were playing Finn Harps. We're losing. Oh, not we weren't losing. We were drawing 0-0 in the game. We were expected to get a few goals in, and as the game was going on, it was getting kind of more hostile, more tense naturally as it does. Um, and then someone shouted like "you F" and then the F slur so loud, like it felt like they were like literally saying it like they might as well have just shouted it in my ear personally to me. And I remember just
Mm,
turning around and being so kind of speechless and kind of looking, not knowing what to do, because the club have never publicly supported or shown any sort of anything towards LGBTQ plus inclusion. And I knew if I went over to a steward, like I'd probably be laughed at, like or I'd probably like I didn't feel
mm.
comfortable enough to even go and tell and report it, because of kind of there was nothing in place within the club there. So um like and that was the last instant that that I remember. But it kind of like rings in your memory like a lot.
Completely. I think we're going to go to viewer questions in just a minute's time, and we'll take a few of them. But do you have any kind of signing off kind of, I guess, words, Graham, kind of about like where we're at and the positivity that you've seen in terms of the game changing?
Yeah, just what I've said already, really, that I feel that
Mm,
it's imminent. I think someone will come out and say, look, this is me, the real me. I'm ready. I'm in a good place. I know I'm going to get the support of the football club, because I think football has moved on. It's made enormous steps in this direction. I think a dressing room where it was a very unforgiving place would be a far more, when you're talking about just in fashion, you from that generation to where we are now. I think there'd be so much understanding, and there'd be love for that individual if he came out, and he'd have the support of every single member of his team, and then that means the club has to support him. In the bigger picture, supporters have to support him, and I think that would cause a chain reaction where you would see many of the guys coming out and say, "Look, I'm actually gay."
and some might do it together. And like I said, Adam, I have that selfishness where I'm like, I want this to happen, but at the same time, I understand if someone doesn't want to do it, so I kind of don't push it as much as I used to, being like, I just want this to happen. So for you, what would you say just right now in terms of what needs to be done? And I guess final closing words on that before we take some viewer questions.
Yeah, so I think just on the the player coming out, the Graham touch kind of what needs to be done and how, or how it could be done at from like a club and sponsors and all that sort of kind of perspective. As you said, like every person's coming out is so unique to them, and they can only we can want them to do it in the most public way and be real out there about it, but at the end of the day, that decision is up to them, and it's unique to them whether they want to announce it on an Instagram post or they want to tell a teammate, or the club announce it. There's so many different ways that it can be done, and again, it depends on that particular person. Just in terms of kind of to bring it back kind of I suppose to an Irish kind of football perspective, I think there's kind of the five main things. I know just you touched on the FEI statement there. We're working with the FEI, myself and John Curry, the club chair, just on trying to get a plan in place with them, just for to show public support for inclusion. Support inclusive events across all levels in Irish football, to support and recognise clubs like ourselves, the Rebels and the Blaze, to provide inclusion training for coaches doing that kickstarts, referees, and then also the main, as I touched on earlier, have these inclusion policies for national and club levels all the way down to the grassroots, because we hope that this will create an environment there when the community will feel comfortable to play or coach or just be involved in football in any way and be open about who they are.
Completely. The FAI said the Football Association of Ireland supports LGBTI inclusion in and through football. We look forward to discussions and working collaboratively with stakeholders and LGBTI sports community actors to promote progress and enhance LGBTI inclusivity in the game. That was from Des Tomlinson, who's the FAI Intercultural Football National Coordinator. We're going to take some questions now from people. So if anybody wants to leave them in the comments, we've got probably about 10 minutes to do it. We've got one here. Do you think that pro clubs should have to partner with LGBTQ plus teams or organizations promoting LGBTQ plus rights to show their support for diversity and inclusion? Do you think that that's a necessity? Because I know in the UK, when I was doing the doc, there wasn't that many. There was a lot of gay supporter groups, but actually they weren't kind of affiliated with the clubs. There was a few that there was quite a few that did, but I think it was Manchester United didn't have an official one, and there was a few other teams that didn't, and I think that might have changed in the years gone by. But Adam, I guess you could comment on it. Do you think that it's a necessity to partner with clubs like the Devils and Blades and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I think it's great to get clubs on board that have experienced it from like our own club from 2005 in that space, and to get their expertise and kind of linking with them and get their testimonies and their experiences and feed it in, see how we can improve things at the bigger clubs and stuff like that. And then also with the various different charities that exist within Ireland and the UK, I'm sure there's Stonewall, there's Belong to, Shout Out in Ireland. So yeah, I think it can only be a positive thing to include anyone that can help improve things.
Someone asked as well, should the FAI follow the example of GAA and participating in Pride parades? I would love to go to Pride with Graham Souness. That is it would be one of the greatest things in the world. What was that day, Graham, for you? Do you think you'll go back and participate again when obviously we can get back to normal prides? And do you think it's something that clubs should maybe be involved in as well?
Yeah, most definitely. Paddy Power did a really good advert. Not that year, I did the year before, and it had a double-decker bus. Premier League gay footballers, and it was empty. And they were posing that question sort of 3 years ago. Brighton and their support I think they may have been playing that day, so they only had a couple of players on their bus, but they get behind. They get behind the walk. My experience was just, the weather was fantastic. It was a gloriously sunny day. As I said, my youngest son came along with me, and his mate, and they had the most fantastic time. And I arrived there the night before in town, and it was like again, the weather that's a big factor in it. But the town was buzzing. It was an electric, real sort of party atmosphere, from just getting out the car to parking it to walking around the corner to going out for dinner the night before. And the actual day itself, it's a long walk in the sunshine. It's particularly hot. And then afterwards, we ended up in the park. I forget the name of the park. There was a great atmosphere there. With restaurants, and there was some fair rides there. It was just, if I'm asked again, I'll be back. I would definitely be back. And I would take
Have to get you for Dublin Pride.
Yeah, we'll have to get you to be the chair of Dublin Pride or something in the car going forward. Someone messaged to say thank you for taking part, Graham. A question from a huge Liverpool workmate: what was it like playing against Maradona in Italy?
He was, in some people's eyes, the greatest player ever. The one thing he had, like all these great players, have a sixth sense and know where the danger is. They're seeing a picture that no one else sees. Apart from the obvious things he would possess, his touching control. At that time, he had real athleticism, a real sort of. He was only about 5'7", but he was just solid muscle. If you did make contact with him, you generally bounced off him. It was just a unique talent, and it was a crime that he didn't play longer at the highest level because of what happened to him. And then his ill health in later life was a result of, people peddling stuff that they shouldn't have been to him. And it's a tragedy because he was a very, very sad case in the end. But there's an argument for him being the very, very best.
John asked, Graham, you have a history of taking an inclusive approach as a manager. Why do you think that inclusion is a very important thing within the dressing room, and diversity as well, and blending it all together?
Well, I only ever judge people on if I felt they were good enough. I'm talking about as a manager. I signed Morris Johnson, and 119 years. Glasgow Rangers had never signed a Catholic player. And the second,
I think that's what they're talking about.
First press conference, we signed a Catholic player. I said, yes, of course I would. And of course, cynical journalists look to the sky. And I made the point, I said, I'm married to a Catholic. My kids are Christian Catholics. So why? So I can be married to them. I can't come to work with them. So that was always on the cards. We signed the first black player, the first Jewish player. And I never look at, and again, I wasn't brought up in the west of Scotland where bigotry is still an issue. I'm from Edinburgh. And I said already, I'm from a household where, they didn't look at the colour of your skin or what school you went to. It was just about if you're good enough to do the job or not. And that's been my attitude to life. I don't judge people by the skin or religion. I've got a large circle of friends from all corners of the globe, and they're all quite different. And that's how it should be. That's how it should be.
We got this one from Paul O'Brien. Is that the Devils manager? He said, I'll be announcing the squad for the Shelbourne Pride match later this evening. One advance announcement is that Adam will be captaining the team on Saturday at Salco Park. Did you know that?
Do now. Thanks, Paul.
Can you tell us a bit about that match and what people, what's actually happening with it? And obviously it's football versus homophobia. I spoke with them. They work over in the UK as well.
So the game it's held once a year. Obviously, it wasn't held last year, but it was it's held once a year with Shells. By all accounts, this is my first year doing it. So by all accounts, it is a great, it's a great day out, just to play on, such a historic pitch, and just getting to play against some League of Ireland legends, and again, it gives you that kind of validation and kind of that respect, that you're being welcomed to talk and to take part in such a great game. And then and just in relation to Saturday's game, it kicks off at 2:00, and it's going to be live streamed on the Shelbourne YouTube, as far as I'm aware.
Amazing. I think that's pretty much all the questions that we have that have come in. So thank you so much, guys. Graham, an absolute pleasure to talk to you and pick your brain on this. And as a gay man and a massive football fan, thank you as well for the words that you said on Sky Sports that day. They might seem simple, but that was a massive gesture, and it was received obviously so well from people, especially from someone who was a tough nut on the football pitch like yourself. It meant a lot, and it was really, really great. So genuinely, thank you. And I know you'll probably go, nah, it was nothing. It was nothing.
No. But what I'd like to say is, sexual men, you're always nervous about saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Because this is like, I'm on here tonight, and I'm scared about if I said anything wrong, should not have said that. And we need educating. I think you find there's lots of people out there like me that want to learn more, want to understand more, and would be sympathetic. And I want to know, I want to understand more. As I said, I'm lucky because I'm a 21-year-old boy who lives in a very different world. We have conversations, obviously, about everything, and I learn a great deal from him. Because as I said, I'm an old boy now, but I like to think I'm still able, I still want to learn new things and understand things. So
I think
if I made any mistakes tonight, I apologize.
I think it's the biggest thing, though. It's not hopping on people for mistakes when they're trying to engage in a topic and learn themselves. And 100%. 100% agree with that. Adam, thank you so much as well. Good luck in the game. You are captaining, so lead that team out and do whatever you can to win it. And yeah, thank you so much, guys. Very much appreciated. I want to remind everybody as well that this webinar was part of Sporting Pride's Get Out, Get Active campaign, which is being supported by Bank of Ireland and their Begin Together fund. Good luck. For more information in making sport in Ireland more inclusive, visit sportingpride.ie. You can check it all out there, and also major reps to the Dublin Devils, Cork Rebels, Phoenix Tigers, and Belfast Blaze as well. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Very much appreciated. Thank you so much to everybody for watching as well. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks. See you later. Bye-bye.